AITA for moving out when my parents ask me to pay rent. I already do their work at home and babysit 5 siblings. I'm 23 and the oldest of 5 siblings. We range in age from me down to my youngest brother who's 10. I'm currently a full-time student, finishing up an afterdegree that's going to land me a solid position in my field. I'm lucky enough to already be working part-time in the industry I'm studying for, and my employer has made it clear they'll take me on full-time the moment I'm done with school. The part-time job pays well enough that I can cover my tuition, my living expenses, and still set some aside each month. I'm not rich by any means, but I'm doing all right for a student. My parents both work full-time. My mom has a standard 9 to 5, but it's a physically demanding and emotionally draining job. She's absolutely exhausted most nights. My dad works much longer hours. He's usually out the door before sunrise and gets home late. I respect both of them for how hard they work, and that's one of the reasons I've been doing what I do at home. Over the last few years, I've gradually taken on more and more of the responsibilities around the house. It wasn't like one big conversation where we all sat down and decided that I'd be the one to keep everything running. Things just kind of drifted in that direction. It started small. I'd pick up groceries when I was already out. Then it was helping with dinner, then making dinner, then meal prepping for everyone's lunches during the week. Eventually, I found myself doing the grocery shopping every week, managing the meal plans, cooking most nights, doing the family's laundry, and making sure the house stayed organized. I also ended up becoming the unofficial manager of the household chore system. I keep track of who does what and when, and I make sure everyone's pulling their weight. I'm not a tyrant about it or anything, but I do make sure that my younger siblings are learning some responsibility. My 10-year-old brother, for example, is in charge of feeding and walking the dogs, and I make sure we're stocked up on dog food and everything else he needs. The way I see it, I took all this on because it needed to be done. I wanted to help, and no one else seemed able to do it consistently. My parents didn't ask for it explicitly, but they leaned on it heavily once it was in place. I'd hear things like, "Thank you for dinner," or, "I don't know what we'd do without you," which felt nice. But over time, it stopped feeling like I was helping. It started to feel like I was expected to keep it all together. Like if I dropped the ball, the whole house would just fall apart. Then Christmas came. I'd had my eye on a PlayStation 5 for a while, and I finally found a decent deal and decided to treat myself. I keep it in my room, and it's strictly mine. The rest of the family still uses a shared PlayStation 4 in the living room. I didn't make a big deal out of it, didn't rub it in anyone's face, just quietly enjoyed having something that was mine and mine alone. Apparently, my 20-year-old brother wasn't too thrilled about that. He started complaining to our parents about how I was making so much money and not sharing anything. His words, not mine. He made it sound like I was swimming in cash and hoarding it all to myself, which was kind of rich coming from someone who works part-time and doesn't pay rent, doesn't contribute to the household budget, and only sporadically does his assigned chores when reminded. So then came the talk. My parents sat me down and said they'd been hearing that I was being unfair with my money. That I lived under their roof and that they expected a financial contribution now that I was earning more. They didn't yell, but the message was clear: I was being selfish. I pointed out, calmly, I might add, just how much of the household labor I took on, and they acknowledged that, but said it still wasn't right that I was earning more and not giving back. I walked away from that conversation feeling completely gutted. I had been working hard for years, not just in school and at my job, but at home too. And not once had anyone said, "We want to talk about how we can ease your burden." Not once did they say, "You're doing too much, let us help." Instead, the moment I bought something nice for myself, suddenly I was selfish. Suddenly, the invisible labor I had been doing for so long didn't count for anything. So I went to my room and did some math. If I gave them the amount they asked for each month, I'd still have about $800 left after bills, savings, and spending. Which is okay, but it wasn't just about the money. It was the principle. I was expected to work, go to school, manage the household, and now also financially contribute just because I was finally getting a small taste of financial stability. I looked at my course load and realized that if I dropped a couple of classes, I could shift to nearly full-time hours with my employer. It would push back my graduation by a year, but I'd be making significantly more money, and I could afford to get my own place. And with my own place, I wouldn't be the household manager anymore. I wouldn't be the one doing laundry for 6 people, planning meals for the week, cooking, shopping, organizing, and fielding complaints about who did or didn't clean the bathroom. I would have time. I would have peace. I would finally have space that was truly mine, not just a bedroom with a door I closed at night. So now I'm stuck in this weird place where I'm seriously considering moving out. I know that if I go, things at home will get chaotic fast. The laundry won't do itself. The meals won't prep themselves. The grocery lists won't write themselves. And I know my siblings aren't used to taking on that level of responsibility because I've been doing it for them for years. But is it my job to keep doing it forever? Is it fair that I'm expected to give up my own time and money just so everyone else can coast a little longer? I didn't sign up to be a third parent. I love my family, but I'm also tired. And I'm tired of being told that everything I do still isn't enough. So yeah, I'm strongly leaning toward getting my own apartment, shifting my schedule, and giving myself the space to actually live a little. I know it's going to be hard for them. I know my parents will be stressed and my siblings will be overwhelmed. But maybe that's what needs to happen for them to realize just how much I've been doing all along. Would I be the asshole if I walked away from that responsibility and let them see what life is like without me running the household? Or is this the moment where I finally choose myself for once? Update 1. So, I did it. I packed up and left. It wasn't some dramatic confrontation or heated exit. There were no shouting matches, no slammed doors, no tearful goodbyes. I just left. I packed my car with everything I owned, which, honestly, was kind of humbling. Years of being rooted in the same place and all my worldly possessions still fit into the trunk and back seat of a modest sedan. A few boxes of clothes, my laptop, my work stuff, a small TV, and of course, the PS5. That came with me like it was a piece of treasure. I had already found a short-term Airbnb before I told anyone my decision. I didn't want to deal with the emotional fallout in the moment. I had 2 weeks booked in a tiny one-bedroom unit downtown, just enough time to give myself a breather and get everything sorted with my job, classes, and a lease for an actual apartment. The Airbnb wasn't fancy, but it felt like freedom. The first night I sat on the couch with takeout in silence and just let myself exist without someone asking where the laundry detergent went or what was for dinner tomorrow. No demands. No obligations. No responsibilities except the ones I chose. I'm not going to lie, I may have gone a little overboard on Tinder. I hadn't realized how much of my life had been paused while I was under my parents' roof. It wasn't just the logistics of not having privacy, it was the psychological weight of always being on. Always managing. Always the reliable one. I'd never had the chance to really date, not properly. And now here I was, living alone for the first time, with a decent income, time to spare, and no one watching over my shoulder. Let's just say I made up for lost time. No regrets. After 2 weeks, I signed a lease on a small but comfortable apartment just outside the city core. It's not luxurious, but it's clean, quiet, and most importantly, mine. I set up my own little corner of peace. A couch that no one else sits on. A kitchen where nothing disappears. A bedroom that stays clean unless I mess it up. I'm still finishing out this semester as a part-time student to keep things steady, but I've already arranged to move to full-time hours with my employer over the summer. Then, come fall, I'll balance a reduced course load with continued full-time work. It means my second degree will take a bit longer, but I'm financially independent now, and that matters more. Of course, this all came with fallout. I didn't expect everyone to be happy about my decision, but the backlash was louder and more bitter than I anticipated. My parents were shocked. I think they assumed that I'd cool off after our conversation and fall back into place like I always did. They never imagined I'd actually go. That I'd really pack up and leave. They're upset, and they're not hiding it. There have been passive-aggressive texts, awkward silences, and one long email from my mom laying out everything they feel I owe them. I haven't answered it. The house, from what I hear, is a disaster. Not physically falling apart, but the rhythm is gone. That quiet, invisible structure I kept in place is gone now, and it turns out no one knew how much I was doing until I stopped doing it. My parents didn't have the bandwidth to pick up the slack, so they made the next logical move in their eyes. They passed it all on to my 20-year-old brother. The same one who complained about how I didn't share my PS5. The one who said I was unfair for not giving back more. Now he's in charge. The grocery shopping, the laundry, meal planning, meal prep, managing the household schedule, making sure the dogs are walked and fed and have food, coordinating chores with the younger kids, keeping the fridge stocked, checking that everyone has lunches ready to go, all of it. His own chores didn't disappear either, and the rest of the siblings had their responsibilities ramped up to compensate. And they're all pissed. My siblings, who used to coast through the week with lunches magically packed and laundry folded neatly on their beds, now have to pull their weight. The youngest is suddenly very aware that feeding the dogs doesn't mean pouring kibble into a bowl, it also means making sure there's kibble in the house to pour. My sister, who used to leave her dirty dishes for later, now gets lectures from my brother about cleaning up after herself. It's like the whole house was running on an engine no one could see, and now that I'm gone, the engine stalled, and they're trying to crank it back to life with sheer resentment. My oldest brother, though, is especially salty. Apparently, he's constantly overwhelmed. He complains about not having time to himself, and he's frustrated that his girlfriend isn't allowed over when my parents aren't home. He doesn't have a private space to just be, the way I used to not have one. He's realizing how suffocating that can be. He tells mutual friends how unfair it is, how he's been dumped with all this responsibility, how no one listens to him, how tired he is. Ironic, right? I haven't rubbed it in. I haven't gloated. But I won't lie, there's a part of me that feels vindicated. This is what I was doing. This is what I carried. And no one saw it until I put it down. I do feel bad sometimes. I don't hate my family. I love them. But I spent years putting everyone else ahead of myself, believing that if I just worked harder, if I just held everything together a little tighter, maybe it would be enough. But it never was. The moment I had something of my own, I was guilt for it. Expected to hand it over. Expected to do more. It didn't make sense to keep doing all that and pay rent on top of it. If I was going to be treated like a tenant, then I was going to live like one, with my own lease, my own space, and my own freedom. So now I live in my own place, with my own things, answering to no one. I go to work, I come home, I cook for myself or not at all. I clean when I feel like it. I sleep without being woken up early because someone forgot to set their own alarm. I come and go as I please. And yeah, the guilt lingers some days, but freedom tastes better. Update 2. It's been a few months since I moved out, and honestly, I thought the chaos back home would settle down once everyone adjusted. I figured that with a bit of time and enough frustration, they'd fall into some kind of rhythm on their own. That the responsibility would eventually redistribute, or at least the others would step up out of necessity. But that's not what happened. At all. Instead, what happened was slow, creeping dysfunction. That invisible labor I had been doing for years didn't just vanish into thin air when I left, it accumulated. It piled up like unwashed laundry in the basement. The systems I had quietly maintained without anyone really noticing, the chore charts, the meal prep rotation, the grocery lists organized by aisle, collapsed. And the thing about invisible labor is that once it stops, you don't just notice its absence. You feel the consequences. Constantly. Daily. My 20-year-old brother, Josh, the one who once complained about how unfair it was that I didn't share my PS5 and that I made money without contributing, was now the reluctant captain of a sinking ship. He had been tasked with taking over everything I used to do, but unlike me, he never had the discipline, experience, or bandwidth for it. The chore chart I used to update like clockwork. Forgotten. Not just outdated, but buried under a pile of unopened mail on the kitchen counter. Meal prep became an occasional event, sometimes skipped entirely. One week, their meal plan was apparently just a single frozen lasagna and a family-sized bag of chips from Costco. I heard about that one through my youngest brother, who texted me with a picture of the dinner plate and a sad-looking thumbs-up emoji. The dogs didn't escape the fallout either. My 10-year-old brother, who I used to remind and double-check constantly, forgot to feed them 2 days in a row. When I found out, I had to resist the urge to drive over and fix it myself. But I didn't. I held the line. Because this was their house now. Their responsibility. From what I've gathered, the house itself became a constant mess, dishes stacking up in the sink, laundry left wet in the washer until it started to smell, random fast food wrappers on the counters, half-finished school projects on the table, no one knowing if there was milk in the fridge until they were pouring a bowl of cereal. It wasn't that my family was incapable. It was that they had no muscle memory for the day-to-day maintenance I had always done silently in the background. And now they were having to build that from scratch in real time, while already overwhelmed. My parents, who both still work full-time, tried stepping in at first. They really did. But they just didn't have the energy for it. My mom came home from work too exhausted to think about coordinating who cooked or vacuumed or made sure the lunches were packed. My dad, who already works long hours, wasn't about to start managing household logistics in the little time he had off. Tension started to build. They began getting snippy with everyone, snapping at the kids, arguing more frequently, and walking through the house with that specific exhausted frustration that only comes from constantly picking up other people's slack. That's when the subtle campaign to get me back started. First, it was small, easy-to-ignore texts from my mom. "The kids miss you. Maybe come by for dinner," or "made your favorite tonight in case you're in the area." Then my dad started chiming in. "Hey, the Wi-Fi setup's been weird. Think you could help out?" They never outright asked me to move back, at least not at first. But the intention was clear, they were trying to test the waters. Trying to reel me back in with nostalgia, guilt, and small requests that they hoped would snowball. I wasn't buying it. I stayed polite but firm, that's not my job anymore. I didn't move out on a whim. I left because I had spent years being the unpaid, unacknowledged third parent of that household. I wasn't going to be lured back in to patch up the sinking boat while everyone else kept drilling holes in the hull. But they didn't stop. After a few more weeks of things spiraling, the subtlety disappeared. I got a phone call from my mom one evening. She was stressed, clearly overwhelmed, and she didn't mince words this time. She said, "We think it would be good if you moved back in. You're part of this family, and things just aren't the same without you." That line hit me hard, not because it was emotional, but because of the irony. Things weren't the same without me. Exactly. That was the point. I reminded her that I left for a reason. That I wasn't their built-in caretaker. That if the household wasn't running smoothly, it wasn't my fault, it was the result of years of taking me for granted. If they wanted to fix it, they needed to start teaching the younger siblings how to contribute, not just wait for me to come back and rescue them. She wasn't thrilled with that answer. And then something unexpected happened. My dad reached out again a few days later. But this time, it was different. He wasn't trying to guilt-trip me or sugarcoat anything. Instead, he offered a compromise. He said, "What if we actually paid you? Like, a proper arrangement. You'd have clear responsibilities, but you'd also get rent money and your own schedule." At first, I laughed out loud. The idea of being a paid family coordinator sounded absurd. Like some weird, dystopian domestic internship. But then I started thinking. Why was it absurd? I'd been doing unpaid labor for years. Running a household of 7 is not some casual side hobby, it's a full-time operation. And if they were finally recognizing that labor had value, was it really so crazy? What if I treated it like a part-time job? What if I had boundaries and structure? What if I didn't live there, but visited on designated days, handled what needed to be done, and got compensated accordingly? What if I took the emotional messiness out of it and approached it like I would any other contract gig? What if, instead of running myself ragged for free, I set limits and got compensated fairly? Update 3. So, I moved back, but on my terms. After my dad floated the idea of a paid arrangement, I spent a couple of weeks thinking it through. I weighed the pros and cons, wrote out a list, ran numbers, and talked it over with a couple of friends. The idea of returning to the house I'd fought to escape felt like a step backward. But the idea of monetizing the labor I had already been doing for years, without recognition, was strangely appealing. Not because I missed the chaos, but because for the first time, I'd be in control. I wouldn't be drifting back into old patterns. I'd be coming in as someone with leverage, with structure, and with the ability to say no. So we negotiated. I was clear from day one, no rent, period. I wasn't going to move back in just to pay for the privilege of doing domestic labor. My parents agreed. I told them I wanted my own room, which was a given, but I added a lock on the door myself, bought it, installed it, and kept the key on my own ring. It was symbolic as much as it was practical. This was not going to be my childhood bedroom anymore. This was going to be my space, with boundaries. But the most important part was the written agreement. I typed it up myself. Nothing fancy, just a clean, one-page document that laid out exactly what I would and would not be responsible for. I'd coordinate the household logistics for no more than 5 hours a week, total. That included, prepping meals for the week on Sundays, just dinners, lunch is everyone's own problem, building out a grocery list based on what people submitted to the shared spreadsheet, and creating a weekly chore chart that broke tasks down by day and assigned them out by name. On Wednesday evenings, I'd check in, make adjustments, and reassign anything that had fallen through the cracks. That was it. If someone didn't do their part, I didn't pick it up. I didn't cover for anyone. I wasn't going to be the backup plan anymore. In return, I get $500 a month. No strings attached. It's basically a side hustle now, my version of freelancing for a very dysfunctional, hyperlocal nonprofit with 7 board members who can't agree on anything. I still work full-time. I still take part-time classes to finish my degree. The difference is that when I'm at the house, I'm not the third parent anymore. I'm just a consultant. I show up, I do my 5 hours, and then I go live my life. Josh had to go back to managing his own schedule, which was a wake-up call for him. The same brother who once thought I was being selfish for not sharing my things was now suddenly very aware of how much easier life had been when I was quietly keeping the entire household functional. Now, he has to do his own laundry, prep his own meals, and juggle chores like everyone else. My younger siblings also had a hard reality check. There were no more invisible hands cleaning up after them, no quiet reminders about forgotten lunch bags or late-night laundry swaps. They had to start taking care of their spaces, managing their time, and learning actual responsibility. The first few weeks were a disaster, missed trash days, soggy sandwiches, dogs whining for dinner that hadn't been served, but gradually, they started to adapt. The biggest surprise? My parents actually stuck to the deal. I expected cracks. I expected them to slip back into old habits, to just ask for one more thing, or quickly delegate some last-minute task. But they didn't. To their credit, they respected the boundaries. They realized that they had relied on me for far too long, and that this arrangement, weird as it sounded, forced them to finally reckon with the household they'd created. I wasn't the live-in patch for their lack of structure anymore, I was just the planner. The accountability system. And they had to actually follow through. And I think that's what changed the dynamic most of all, the house didn't magically become efficient or organized overnight. It's still loud and messy. Someone still forgets to put the laundry in the dryer. The dogs still bark too early in the morning. But now, the mess belongs to them. It's not mine to solve. I'm not absorbing the stress like I used to. I don't feel like I'm suffocating under expectations I didn't sign up for. I walk into the house, do what I've agreed to do, and walk away with my peace intact. It's weirdly satisfying to see the whole thing working, not smoothly, but functionally. It's not perfect, but it doesn't have to be. The house runs, even if it sputters sometimes. And more importantly, I no longer feel like my life is tethered to whether or not 6 other people remembered how to exist without me. I've reclaimed my time. My boundaries. My independence. When I step into my room and close the door behind me, I don't feel cornered or trapped. I don't feel like the air is heavy with unspoken obligations. I feel respected. I feel free.